Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. How are you? So my name is Gina Jardine, and I am the chair for Women in Mining UK, and I am absolutely delighted to be able to chair this panel for you as introduced by Andrew. And I think it's a really lovely follow-on from what Sir Martin Sorrell had to say. I think there's a lot of elements that Sir Martin had in there that our esteemed panel is going to talk about. So we know that mining underpins every aspect of the energy transition, and yet our industry continues to face persistent challenges, from attracting the right people to the industry, about reshaping perceptions, about building trust, and about inspiring future talent. And so our panel today is going to help us unpack some of that in a conversation. So let me quickly introduce you to them. We have Kate Thornton, who is the CEO of ABMEC, the British Mining Trade Association. We have Justin Baring down there, partner at JB Management and founder of the Julian Baring Scholarship Fund. We have Sharon Strugnell, who's Technical Director at WSP. And we have Egor Fedorenko, formerly President of the USL Green Economy and the ESG Society, who is now with BP. And Egor was here as a student last year, but he's representing industry today. So it's a really lovely way to see how he's made that transition from student into the business life in mining. And then we have Jacques, last but not least Jacques down there, who is a partner at DSS Plus, which is a leadership and culture development consultancy. So let's dive straight in. Egor, you've come through the student and the graduate community, and given that you're likely to be the youngest on the panel, I've actually got 3 questions because I think that you'll be able to remember all 3 in one go, as opposed to some of us who probably need them one at a time. So, you know, you've been deeply involved in the student community. What do you see are the biggest perceptions and I guess misperceptions about mining amongst your generation? That's the first one. Second, and what have you seen well that actually shifts those views? What can this audience learn that other companies have done well where we can shift those views? And some practical steps that companies could take to help engage students and graduates more effectively.
Thank you for the question, Gina. Yeah, I'll start with the perceptions side first. So when it comes to, I think, my generation, students and young people in general, the narrative about mining becoming a fundamental part to net zero and becoming and enabling the green transition is very much beginning to crystallize.
Okay.
I think, I mean, at least with the intelligent side of the students anyway. You know, the message is getting across, and more often than not, people are beginning to understand the importance of the critical metals and the minerals. And so that's no longer an argument or a debate as such anymore.
So it's a fact that's out there.
It's you know, I have, throughout my time at UCL, I haven't had a single debate where someone said, okay, that's not true actually.
Okay, good.
So that's a good progress. And that's what we're seeing.
It's also a critical point, isn't it? It's a critical point that employers have to understand that is that is one of the entry paths. That's not a tick box anymore. You have to be involved.
Absolutely,
in that. Yep.
Absolutely. However, I would say the more relevant the question about our perceptions, especially as part of the conversation we're having right now about the next generation of the leaders in the sector, is what are the perceptions right now for the students or the graduate who studied mining-related diplomas, you know, who did geology or mining engineering, because that's where we are seeing the gap, and that's where the parallels do not align as much. I would say that overall the mining sector seems to highlight the talent issue as sort of a main issue that it has. But if you go to the graduates, if you go to the students, I think their perception is that getting into the industry is actually quite difficult.
Right.
Getting into the industry is hard, it's unclear, and the availability of early careers opportunities, and not just in the UK but around the world, seems to be very scarce. And that sort of seems to be the reality on the ground as well. So what tends to happen is that as a result, they end up applying to the hundreds of the finance jobs that we have in the City of London. And that's how mining loses its key talent, or at least the most talented individuals.
That's a really interesting point. So are other industries making it easier for these graduates to get jobs than what the mining industry is?
Yeah, so, and then I'm going to expand onto, all other practical solutions. And so I'd say that one of the key points is starting, the industry needs to take early careers more seriously. It needs to make the pathway into early careers more transparent. It needs to make it clearer, right? It needs to meet the demand that it has around the world. Let's say a company is in other sub-Saharan Africa. You need to meet that demand of the jobs there with the supply of the talented individuals that you have here in the UK. We all know that we have the world-class universities here that are very highly ranked, that produce genuinely, the most amazing talent there is in the world. The linkage isn't happening. The second thing is modernizing your recruitment process. And I'll give a very good example on that. Last year, I was speaking to one of the CEOs of a junior company. I'm not going to name the company. But, the person said, we actually posted a job vacancy for a summer internship, and we only received 5 applicants. And I said, okay, well, something's not adding up here. Right? So where did you post it? And he said, we posted it on Facebook Marketplace. And I said, okay, well, that's great, but that's probably not the way that you should.
That's your mum's generation.
Really exactly. That's probably not the route that you should take it.
Right.
And so, but I give you a much better example of Rio Tinto recently were posting their internships and the summer applications, and they were doing it through LinkedIn. And they engaged also the universities in London and across the UK. They engaged the geology departments and the engineering departments there, and they got 300 to 400 applications per role.
Wow,
right?
fantastic.
That's a big difference, at times 100, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the 2 key things. And the third one that I would add, and it sort of links closely to what I said for the second point, is that companies need to engage with universities more, because the mining sector is evolving, the commodity markets are evolving, and the demands of what the mining companies want to see in their future talent is changing. It's not the same as what it was 20 or 30 years ago. The fundamentals of geology and engineering, of course, are the same.
Yeah.
But what you want to see in those graduates, it's not the same. And the only way that you can get this right is if you come and you talk to them and you say, okay, this is what we want to see from your students. Okay. And that way we can genuinely create a positive sum effect for everyone and encourage mining companies to have early careers opportunities and to hire new students into the industry.
Great, thanks, that's fantastic. To me, there's a bit of a paradox there, though, in the sense that we're hearing that the students understand and have that sustainability as a core fundamental base, and yet the organisations are not attracting it. So does the industry itself still have a perception problem? And perhaps, Sharon, I can come to you. Mining is viewed as part of the climate problem more than the solution. I think that we can say that hands down. But from your technical and your sustainability perspective, how can we better communicate the industry's essential role in enabling decarbonisation? And where are you seeing that companies are telling that story or doing that really well?
Interesting questions. If I can just direct...
2, because you're a bit older.
Yeah. Egor, question for yourself. What inspired you into a mining profession?
So I studied geosciences myself at UCL, and that was one of the key industries that your knowledge can actually be applied to. And I think it was an industry where you can work beyond Excel and you can actually see what you're doing and what you're trying to explore. And it's the connection between trying to apply the knowledge on the, to the on-the-ground operations and having an impact through that is what I think got me interested.
But did you know that you wanted to be in the mining sector?
Sure.
Yeah. See, I think the downside is, especially here in the UK, and what you were saying before was quite interesting, I feel like, and I am talking very much UK based now, there's nothing as part of our curriculum to inspire people into the mining profession. So I think it's really hard, and it's really interesting, and I spoke to some of the people on the stand at Camborne yesterday, and the messaging was that they not fallen into it, but it's kind of through geology that they've now been inspired to do mining. But to your point, a lot of people get educated and then they flee the country, and then we lose that talent, which is a shame. And I feel like unless you're part of the country that's got a mining heritage, South Crofty, you're seeing it on your doorstep, there is a risk that parts of the UK aren't having that exposure to mining to be inspired into it. And I think what we need to be mindful of as an industry is, everyone in this room has got a career in mining. We get why it's important from an ESG perspective. All the major mining companies have got ESG written into their strategy. Like, I don't need to tell you that decarbonisation can't happen without us. We all know that, but we're not telling the younger generation to inspire them into mining, or we're definitely not in the UK. And I think that's where it's really important that companies are making sure that outreach is like a massive target for them, to make sure that we're getting that future talent through. And Steve Holly from South Crofty spoke at a conference last week, and he was talking about some of the success they've had, talking and doing outreach local to where their mine, and now they're seeing 5 years later them same students they spoke to coming through the careers path. Like, how amazing is that? That's absolutely brilliant. And that's one brilliant example of where you've got a company that are doing it right, and they're getting that talent and they're retaining them. Because there's a part in attracting talent, and then you have to retain them. And I think, your big companies like Anglo, BHP, they've all got the targets, they're all doing the right thing, but the messaging is really important. It's the communication. And Sir Martin kind of stole my sales pitch before when he was talking about storytelling. We all work hard, we all get home at the end of the day, people sit on the phone scrolling Instagram, some people watch a good sitcom, some people go onto Netflix and watch film. We need to be telling a story as mining professionals to encourage people in, because if we're not telling them the amazing impact that we're having, then we run the risk that people go and get their degrees in geology, geoscience,
and go out
and then go elsewhere, go into a different profession. And I fell into this profession, and I'm sad to say that. Had it not been for working for the right company at the right time, I possibly wouldn't be in the mining sector. And I'd be really annoyed, having heard about the impact that we're having, to think, well, why am I not part of that? So I think companies need to be, from a sustainability, when you talk about like targets, it's all great, but you do need to be telling stories, and not just telling stories to our sector, because we all get it. We need to be thinking about those outside the sector. And like, from my perspective, when I go into schools and do lots of STEM outreach, a lot of the time the kids love it and they're buzzing because it's not their teacher talking to them. It's the teachers at the end of the sessions that catch me on the way out, and they're like, I didn't know that you did that. I didn't know that was a profession. I didn't know that mining had such a... Because they only ever hear the negative connotations. They don't hear about the amazing things that we're doing as a sector. And I think, examples of where people are doing it brilliantly, is to the second part of the question, Anglo. They did an amazing video of the Woodsmith mine where they explained what they were planning to do, how they were doing it, and the impact it was having on not only just the local community, but the whole, like, the nation. And I was like, but again, that wasn't aimed at mining professionals. That was aimed at the general public. That was aimed at school children. That's the people we need to be talking to, because we all get it. So Anglo would be an example. And there's a few companies that are now focusing on, reducing timelines, bringing down, I think it's Fortescue, who are bringing, reduce, I think they were set to be not at carbon neutral by 2040, and they've now brought that back to 2030. People are taking it serious, but we need to be telling the right people and not those in the room today, because we all get it.
Well, it's an interesting point, because there was a young lady who asked a question about what are the rooms that we should be in, not just in our own rooms, because we all get it, right? We've already bought in, so who else should we be telling? And I think the show telling, and I think for me, there's also a piece around, it's analogous to role modelling. Yeah. So, and that comes down to what are people saying, how are we saying it with authenticity. and then to me is trust, which I think is a really nice leeway that I'm going to move over to you, Justin. You know, I'm really interested in your perspective both as an investor and a philanthropist. So can we talk about trust from both perspectives? You've got 2 vantage points. What do you think builds trust, both for investors and for future talent? And when we've touched on a couple of the topics, but you've got quite a unique perspective coming from 2 very, very different points.
Well, I think, you know, from the Julian Baring Scholarship perspective, we receive the CVs in from all of the students that are applying for finance for us. And one thing that is amazing is how these young girls and boys think that they can change the world by being in the mining industry. It's sort of staggering that their optimism and their ambition to change the world because they've got some new technology to do with tailings or reducing emissions. You know, they all think that they're doing really great things to improve the planet. But the big concern is that some of these great students that we've supported, you know, once they've graduated, there aren't any jobs for them to go to. And this is the great dilemma, is that, I mean, this morning Rio Tinto have announced job cuts. Yesterday Glencore announced job cuts. You know, there is a lot of jobs, highly skilled jobs being shed in the industry. And you know, the young people going through the ranks are not got jobs to go to. Now, of course, my inbox as an investor is full of people raising money. So, and this is the long-term thing that we've got to keep an eye on, is that the money that's being raised today is going to possibly bring a job or 10 jobs in 5 years' time. So my message to the young people trying to get jobs into the mining industry is just be patient, it's coming. But it seems fairly grim at the moment from the perspective of opportunities available to them. One of the great sadnesses that we had was that one of our top students from one of the universities in South Africa, he wrote me an email saying, I've just graduated and I'm now going to be a fund manager, which was an extremely depressing prognosis to his engineering degree. But, you know, of course, I've recently got back from a trip to Zambia, seeing a lot of the big mining companies there, and of course they're now training, 100 students a year to do artisanal mining, jobs, you know, electricians, engineers, all working around the mines, because, you know, of course the older generation are retiring, and there are not enough jobs in those sort of parts of the you know, the mine that really are essential. So I always say it's amazing how much the companies are doing to do education, whether it's bursaries, whether it's a younger training. And again, there's no shortage of people who want to work in the mining industry in the countries where the mines are. And that's a bit of a difference between here, where everyone says, oh, no one wants to go into mining. Well, actually, the majority of places where the mines are, lots of people want those jobs.
Yeah.
So.
It's interesting, you know, what I'm hearing. It's kind of a really nice build. You'd think we'd planned it. That, you know, it's make it easy to get into recruitment when the jobs exist, but it's also having the stories telling and keeping them interested, so that when we know mining is cyclical, so when it comes back, how do we get those people to come back to the industry or come into the industry and bring the skills that they've learned perhaps in a different industry that we can then apply. And so, Kate, I'm going to turn to you, because I think there's some really nice stories that you've got that you can share. So through your leadership at ABMEC and your involvement with IOM3, you've worked extensively on the outreach to students and educators. So what more do you think that academia and institutions can do to showcase mining as a career of innovation? It sounds like we've got the interest there, but what more can we do to attract people? And then how do we keep them in the industry? Big question.
Yeah, big question. So I think we'll start with, I think academia has a huge problem at the moment, that their funding has been cut so much and that they want to be able to do all of this stuff, but they're so restricted. And we need to look at ways as companies, whether it's investor companies, mining supply companies, or philanthropists, about how do we go about supporting people to find these careers. And I mean, easy ways off the top of my head could be, I mean, we talked about geology and a lot of subjects like that, but we need mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. So why can't we give projects from industry to academia for their final year projects? Bring them in, showcase what they can do there. That would be a really simple way, because that one that helps you with your workforce. But students desperately want a real world
experience
project to work on. I mean, when I did my degree many, many years ago, for one of my pieces of coursework, so my background is biomaterials, we had to work out materials for a hip implant for an elephant. Now, that's not a great real world example. To my knowledge to this day, there's been no hip implants for elephants. But, you know, you could look at materials for drill bits, the mechanics behind it, whether you could bring some geologists in and say, we're looking at this area, would you like to help us out? That's a real simple way that gives everyone that real world experience and opens up that thing. And I mean, so we've got Minerals Matter at the back today. Hello. And they're doing a great job working with like companies and going to schools, but you know, we could, the thing is, so being very UK based here, in the UK education system, we see that up until year 6 in primary school, children are so engaged in science and engineering.
And the teachers.
And the teachers, and they love it. But then something happens and the interest drops off. And part of it is, you know, they're just going through their teenage years. Part of it is, like you discussed, that teachers and parents don't understand it. So we need to look at it in a way that it's not just about working with academia, it's about working with the whole wider community, about informing the parents, because they just don't know. And if we can't do that, and so we need to look at it in a different way. And we've
Right through the
that.
pipeline.
Yeah.
Right, let's get it to them in primary school, and let's keep going in high school, and then how do we engage in graduates, and then, and Jacques, we'll come to you in a second, but the culture of once you're there, what's the culture around that and leadership?
But we need to as well, when we're starting the primary school, have something that a simple resource that the parents can go to and be like, oh, this is what's happening, because there is so much out there, and kids are just interested in everything. So, you know, as parents, we can't keep up. So let's just make it easier so they can just go, oh, there's that, and, you know, that's something we all need to look at.
Okay. And Sharon, I know that you've got lots of views in this space, and Jacques, I promise we will come to you, but we were just chatting beforehand, and it was just like, so there's loads of stories. So did you want to build on that?
Yeah, so I think a few people in the room are aware, and Kate, you shouted out to Minerals Matter, you know, there are forums out there, and I would put it on you all as individuals and professionals in our industry. You know, back to Sir Martin's point before, like, you can all afford an hour of your day to go and do some sort of outreach in schools. A local school, you can go and tell them, you can be a role model, go and tell them about your job. Or if you don't want to do that, there's lots of resource out there. Minerals Matter have got so many amazing resources for you to then pull on and take into schools. And I was very fortunate last year that the IOM3, which Kate was then, has been a previous president of, have supported like an activity booklet. So there's lots of resources you can take into schools and actually inspire the young generation in. And to your point, you know, it's not just targeting the primary age, it's then being consistent and keeping going. And I would say the responsibility is on all of us. It's not just on them key individuals. You can become a STEM ambassador. Minerals Matter will support you with that. So if I ask you one thing from this conference, it's to go away, go on the Minerals Matter website, find out about it, and please become a STEM ambassador and go into your local schools or brownies or scouts and go and inspire them.
And I'll just add to that. I know there's not everyone, we talked about the great stories from the big companies here, but not everyone works for big companies and you don't have that resource. So reach out. So we've got Minerals Matter, we've got the Mining Education Forum, and the outreach team at the IOM3, so that's the Institute of Materials, Minerals and Mining. We're all there and ABMEC as well, we're all there to help. We want to go out, we want to promote all of this, and we can only do it. And the problem, I think it's been spoken about so much, you only generally hear the bad news stories. And
well, that comes back to that storytelling, doesn't it? Let's share the good news story. Let's share those wins with the communities and the schools and those that matter. And then it'll start slowly to build that perception change that we need. Okay. Jacques, We've educated them in primary school and we've given them tools. We've got their parents on board, their teachers are on board. Then at high school we're engaging them and we're keeping them through the value chain, doing industry projects at university, we're getting our recruitment right, and then bang, they've got a job. They're actually in the role. Talk to me about leadership and culture in the mining industry, and what do we need to do to keep, what sort of culture do we need to build in our businesses and our organisations, whether it's large or whether it's small, to make sure that we can keep them engaged, we can keep the enthusiasm and that passion that we've heard about that young people have, so that we keep them in the industry even through the cycles when we can. What are some of the things you've learnt through your interactions that you've had?
And thanks for the question. And it's really very interdependent. You use two words there, leadership and culture. And you can't have one with the other, because leaders create the culture in the organization. And we often speak about leaders in the concept of visible felt leadership, which historically people have said, oh, that's a safety thing, and I get out of my seat and I go and have a walkabout. But visible felt leadership is not something you do. It's like saying, tonight at 9 o'clock I'm going to do parenthood, or Saturday at 11 o'clock I'm going to do happiness. It doesn't work like that. Visible felt leadership is something which is everything that you do and everything that you become as a leader. And historically we've relied heavily on leaders being technologically competent and having the right experience and the expertise.
Well, because they've come up through that pipeline, right? They've come up generally through a technical pipeline.
Exactly, and it starts right down at the front line.
Yep.
I mean, if you get a blasting certificate, you become a supervisor. But we don't equip the leaders with the right soft skills to be able to manage teams. And as you look at teams now, I mean, the way society is going, the way AI, technology, we've got much more diverse teams which require a very different type of leader to be able to engage the organization. And the big thing is that expertise, that authority can only take you that far. If you do not connect with your people, you've lost the plot. And it's really that connectedness that helps create the sense of belonging in an organization. And it's not an add-on. It is not something that it's a nice to do. It's actually a strategic initiative that needs to be actively driven in organizations. We're seeing that in a lot of organizations, that they drive very deliberate programs around respectful workplaces, inclusivity, diversity, etc. And although it's early days, we are starting to see a lot of impact in that, but it still has some major challenges in that. Of course, the other side is the culture, and people, if you go to countries like Australia, Canada, which is more the case than what you would see in Africa and Latin America, for example, see massive turnaround. And it's not because of salaries, because people move for very small salaries, but it's really because of that sense of belonging. Do I feel like I belong in the company? Do I feel valued? Do I have the psychological safety to speak up? And if they don't have that, then they move on very quickly.
I mean, just from my investment hat on, 20% staff turnover, which is often the case in Australia, for me is a great sort of negative for the investment case for the companies. If you're going to consider investing in a company where 20% of the staff walk out the door, that's a very, very high risk for us when we're considering making an investment. And how you deal with it in the Australian context, I mean, they say all different ways, but it is very, very difficult to get that number down, but you have to inspire the culture of a company and want to be belonging to a group of individuals, the corporate culture as well.
And an interesting thing just to add to that is that when you start seeing turnaround, it's got a massive impact on your culture, especially if that turnaround's sitting at senior leadership level. Go and look at companies that's had good performance for many years, and then suddenly they get surprised with fatalities or massive production losses. And you go and check what are some of the things that happened. Very often there were senior leadership changes that happened there. There were issues where there were complaints in terms of respect for people. And it just takes one complaint, and that's got a massive impact on turnover in the organization, where people don't feel belong and they don't feel that psychological safety, as I said.
Yeah. Justin, it's interesting that point, and sort of a question without notice on this one. As an investor, I mean, do you factor in, in terms of your financials, the cultural elements of organisations? And as a former CHRO, I finally feel vindicated that we're coming to the fore. But I mean, is that something that is top of mind now as you're starting to think about investing in companies?
Of course.
And how do you assess that as an outsider looking in? Because I think it's really important for the people in this room who are running these companies to understand.
I mean, going to visit the operations, hearing how they go about treating the staff.
Yeah.
Am I that person? You know, you understand the association with that firm by just talking to the employees, talking to the competitors of the employees. You know, who do you rate really highly in your industry? You know, we're in the industry, so we know who's highly regarded and who's dropped the ball. Very often it's a big M&A deal that's been an inspiration to ruining the culture of something that was really good, then gets destroyed by you know, an overambitious deal. But yeah, it's really sort of fact-checking and scuttlebug. That's what it's called.
But you certainly factor it into the way in which you value a company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you're wanting to be a long-term investor in a company, you're wanting to make sure that the culture is one that you're happy to be associated with, which is very much part of how we look at our companies.
Excellent. Jacques, from a leadership perspective, what's the one habit that you think a leader should have, or one behaviour that a leader should display that is really going to engage their people?
I think I touched on the concept of connection.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. And it's how you show up. I was chatting to a board member just earlier, and they said, you know, when something goes wrong in the organization, do executives show up? And how do they show up? We often call them the moments that matter. And the moments that matter are not in the boardroom. It's not in a clean inbox. It is not in an Excel sheet. It is what you do when you physically put boots on the ground and how you engage and how you connect people. So for me, connection through impactful moments that matter in the field, there is nothing that can beat that in terms of a leader. And
I think matter is a really important word, because a lot of the research that's coming out now around wellness and health and well-being and mental health is all about how I matter and how I can make a difference in an organisation. And I'm assuming, Egor, that's something that's important to you as you embark on your career, is what's the difference that you can make and how do you matter in the organisation? Yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think being engaged from very early on is a deal breaker in terms of how often you choose to switch your careers or your companies, and you know, it's for sure a big part.
Excellent. Well, look, we're nearly out of time, so I would like, in one sentence, just to finish off for each person, what's the single most important thing that the mining industry can do to inspire the next generation? And maybe I'll start with you, Egor.
Start engaging proactively and very targeted in terms of what is the outcome that they want to see. But most importantly, begin to actually take action with the outside.
Excellent.
With the outside world.
Outside of those rooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to say, let's not be targeted.
And a bit of debate.
Yeah, and you know, just have those open conversations. Have it on social media. Have it on TikTok. Just have it somewhere where people can just have it accessible.
And not on Facebook Marketplace.
Not Facebook Marketplace, yeah. And just have it in ways that people could just pick up and put down, and then come back to, give them time to think about, and not limit people. Because if we start limiting the conversations we're having to certain areas, we're going to miss out on a great range of talent. So let's just have it open and invite anyone in to have those conversations.
Okay. Be inclusive to all, I'm hearing. Yeah. Maybe we can attract others to the industry. Yeah. Jacques?
I think it's really to get out of the archaic mindset and not just think about, you know, we need to have procedures, we need to have training, and just tick the boxes to drive compliance. I think we've got a wonderful opportunity to make mining sexy again. And I don't think, I don't think a lot of mining organizations have grabbed that really, not as much as some of the other industries, but there is the opportunity, and I really think we could do that.
Fantastic.
I'd like to see the industry keeping to its promises. You know, when it says it's going to build a mine for a certain amount of money, it achieves that goal.
Which perspective would that be coming from, Justin?
When a mining company says it's going to, do a project under the parameters that it is, if it manages to do anything that it says in its annual reports in terms of the culture and what have you, the companies will be well desired and be able to consistently keep people employed. The cyclical nature of getting rid of people in one cycle and the other doesn't conduce anyone to go and work for it. So I think sticking to the promises would be what I'd like to.
I think trust is a strong word that's come out from your messaging. And Sharon, the final word.
I think we need to showcase diverse role models, showcase exciting projects, to quote Jacques, to make the industry a little bit more sexy and appealing.
Great. Thank you.
And become a STEM ambassador.
Excellent. Well, please join me in thanking our guests for today. I think it's been a fantastic panel and I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you very much.